strikes this morning in Boone County. 10,000 men and women are off the job.
I think they feel at this time it's either all or nothing. We're either going to have a union. If we're going to lose it, we're going to go down fighting. That's how they feel about it.
Since April, at least 2,000 of the Virginia miners in a strike against the Pittston Coal Company have been arrested and jailed during sit-down demonstrations. 3 union leaders still are in jail, and the tactics have led to millions of dollars in fines against the union.
If this can be forced upon mine workers in southwestern Virginia and southern West Virginia, then every working class person in America is at threat.
The UMW says Pittston is trying to kill the union by refusing to sign a 1988 contract that most of the other companies did sign. Pittston, the nation's biggest coal exporter, said it refused because without deep job cuts, the company cannot compete on the world market. At a rally this week in Charleston, the UMW vowed to use traditional union tactics to defeat Pittston and strike a blow for the union cause everywhere. But everywhere there is this question: will the old tactics work? Ed Rabel, NBC News, Charleston, West Virginia.
Covered by security guards. A roving band of more than 100 pickets who concealed their identity showed up at the site. The UMW has been on strike against New Beckley since January. The pickets did not appear to be strikers from that company, but they did have a message.
I think that we want to work. We can run coal out of this state. We don't need scabs from Kentucky to come in here and run our coal. We can do it. And that's the only statement I've got. And I'd appreciate for the support of everybody to get behind us and run these scabs back to Kentucky where they belong. Quit coming in here and taking West Virginia jobs.
A court order restricts New Beckley pickets to 15. Since they had many more, and because it is illegal for pickets to conceal their identity, state police officers ordered them to either remove their masks or leave. They left, and no arrests were reported. In Boone County, 2 cars were beaten with baseball bats and rocks. The windshields were smashed in. Again, no arrests. A band of roving pickets was spotted in Kanawha County near an Appalachian power plant. They also concealed their identity. More than 3,000 miners in southern West Virginia are refusing to go to work as a protest against Pittston Coal. The UMW went on strike against Pittston April 5th. Today, the Wildcat strike spread to Virginia, with 650 employees at 3 Wise County mines walking off the job. The miners say they won't return to work.
They feel at this time it's either all or nothing. We're either going to have a union. If we're going to lose it, we're going to go down fighting. That's how they feel about it.
The miners say they won't return to work until 3 union leaders jailed are released in Virginia. A federal judge has ordered hundreds of miners from several West Virginia mines back to work. On our 6 o'clock news, we said Peabody Coal obtained a restraining order. That was incorrect. All of Peabody's more than 2,000 union miners are refusing to go to work, but company spokesman Tom Clark says they don't like to involve the courts in their labor relations, though he did not rule out requesting a restraining order.
You may see strike activity sometime in the future. Today, the UMW Southeast Regional Coordinator was asked if the Pittston strike will spread to Kentucky. Eddie Burke said the union will make its moves in the coming days. Pittston's only active Kentucky holding is Eastern Coal Corporation in Stone. 200 miners are employed there.
Says they are operating under what he calls a split bag. Miners at 3 smaller mines are working. That's about 50 employees altogether. He says the midnight to 7 shift at the company's major mines worked, but then a handful of picketers showed up this morning and convinced the second shift not to work. Anderson says production has stopped at the Bullitt, Holton, and Pierpoint mines.
Michael Odom talked with Harry Smith about issues surrounding the strike.
The human dignity of their workers who want jobs when Pittston has jobs available. It's about the human dignity of 4,000 pensioners, widows, and disabled miners. If Pittston can renege on its social contract to the UMWA, then any company can renege on any promise to workers across the United States. And as a result, coal miners are at the front of the battle for working people, working men and women across this country, and we will never surrender.
The issues here are in regard to the unions refusing to change from its old ways. There's been massive erosion of the union's job market share in the last 8 or 9 years. And we are different. We see the need for change in the world market, and the union has to recognize it has to change. It has to have a responsible leadership that will recognize the needs of its workers.
The strike will be featured tonight on CBS on 48 Hours.
About 650 Westmoreland employees at 3 Wise County mines have walked off the job for the second time since the Pittston strike began. Westmoreland spokesman Steve Anderson says the company will file a complaint with the National Labor Relations Board in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And in West Virginia, thousands of coal miners have walked off the job as a show of sympathy for the 1,500 Pittston workers in West Virginia and Virginia. This strike is now in its 72nd day. Both the union and Pittston have broken off talks with a federal mediator.
Hancock County could
go out West Virginia.
We're merely asking that companies such as our own and member companies of BCOA be allowed to continue to work, and that the union honor the agreement that we have with them.
Gwennon says Peabody has no plans to use the court system to force miners back to work. The company will just keep sticking to its agreement with the UMW, even though there's no assurance from union leaders that they will.
Their response has been that they really can't control the thing, and that they would wish that they would come back to work, but with no promise to lead that sort of a movement.
Peabody is losing $3.5 million a week because of the strike. Peabody says with coal miners off their jobs, the company will become an unreliable supplier, and their clients will look to other companies for their coal. Peabody says if that happens, their mines will not only be idle, they'll be closed for good. Sheila Gray, WSAZ News Center 3, Kanawha County.
Intimidation tactics. Roving bands of UMW pickets extended their sympathy stoppage as Peggy Fox reports they are now halting operations at some non-union companies.
Piles of untouched coal sit at Hatfield Dock and Transfer in Marmet. The company employs 12 non-union people to haul coal. This morning, they were sent home because 20 union members stood by their gates. This afternoon, 8 pickets remain. Fearful of being fired by their companies for striking illegally, some wear camouflage makeup. All keep their backs to the camera. They are non-violent, but their presence is being felt. Even though the UMW pickets are not blocking trucks today at Hatfield Dock and Transfer, their presence has surprised and intimidated the company. Hatfield Vice President Alan Johnston would not be interviewed on camera, but says he canceled operations this morning to protect the safety of his employees. He doesn't know whether he'll run the trucks tomorrow, but is sure if he does, the pickets will be there. Johnston also says the pickets were at every coal-related company, union or non-union, on the Kanawha River. Union pickets say mines throughout southern West Virginia have been shut down since Monday, but today the strike spread north. Island Creek's mines in Nicholas and Grant counties were hit, shutting down all of that company's entire West Virginia operations. In Kanawha County, it spread to non-union companies. Hatfield Dock and Transfer is a small company with 12 non-union employees who haul coal. But Thursday, no coal moved because UMW pickets stood at the gate. Hatfield Vice President Alan Johnston, who would not talk on camera, says he was surprised by the pickets and canceled work today to protect his employees, even though there were no reports of violence. The pickets refuse to be interviewed on camera. They tell me they will remain non-violent, but continue making their presence known. It's an intimidation tactic roving bands of pickets are using up and down the Kanawha River, and not only coal mines, but any company that depends on coal. Wednesday and Thursday, pickets were seen at an Appalachian power plant. So far, there has been no serious violence, but state police have been put on full alert. A spokesman says the state's nearly 500 troopers have been told to report where they are, even when off duty, so they can react quickly if problems come up.
Thanks for being with us this evening. Well, for the first time since the strike began 73 days ago, violence has gone beyond rock throwing and name calling. Around 2:30 this morning, a pickup truck was blown up by dynamite at the home of a Pittston employee. Lieutenant J.B. Willis of the Virginia State Police said police are questioning numerous people, but at this time have no strong leads. For those still on the job at Pittston, it was work as usual today. Michael Odom, president of Pittston Coal Group, said the company is not experiencing any unanticipated shortages due to the strike. But it was evident when he talked with Newswatch today that the strike was beginning to take its toll.
But we don't see the need for the strike to continue. My point in time now is to try to find out why we're still on strike when we've addressed the concerns of the union, yet they continue to walk away. My biggest concern is that the violence will escalate.
And what can be done about this?
I don't know, catch the people involved, let the National Labor Relations Board take a look at it.
The strike by the UMW against Pittston is gaining strength on a nationwide scale. A wildcat strike
by a Pittston Coal Group employee this morning. Police say a pickup truck and a home belonging to James R. Robinson, Route 3, Castlewood, Virginia, were damaged around 2:30 a.m. Police say 1 or 2 sticks of dynamite were placed under the truck. No one was injured in the blast. Robinson is a supervisor for Pittston. Meanwhile, a work stoppage by United Mine Workers spread to several other states today. Union members in Kentucky, Indiana, and Pennsylvania refused to cross picket lines in sympathy for Pittston strikers. The action is seen as a way to get coal companies to pressure Pittston to sign a contract with the union. But the head of the Bituminous Coal Operators Association says he would no more try to tell someone else how to run their company than have someone else try to tell him how to run his own company. Union officials say they are not responsible for the pickets and are asking union members to return to work. Barry Belial says he can do little to help local governments hurt by the coal strike, and that state police will remain in Southwest Virginia until the strike is over. News Center 5's John Mongol was in Richmond this week to talk with Belial about the strike.
The United Mine Workers went out on strike against the Pittston Coal Group 10 weeks ago. Before that, Governor Jerry Belial was a popular governor in the region, a friend of the working man, and Southwest Virginia's chief economic booster. In the some 70 days since the strike began, that image has changed, at least among the vocal UMW pickets.
And I recognize in the middle of a strike that emotions run high, that friendships and facts are sometimes forgotten. Now, those things will pass.
A key question for the region is how much the strike will affect the image of an area hungry to diversify its economic base.
I think if the strike ends in the near future, it will not have a lasting impact. If it goes on indefinitely, it will be very, very difficult for us to attract new industry to Southwest Virginia, no question about it.
Many in the union see the state police presence in the coal field as another force against them in their struggle. The governor does not agree.
And the state police have been sent to the coal fields in order to protect those rights of both sides. Not to take sides, but to protect the rights of all sides and the public. They will be there as long as that is necessary to protect those rights.
Belial has asked his Secretary of Health and Human Resources to help counties affected by the strike in any way possible. But the governor can offer no hope to school systems and other local government functions hurt by missing coal severance money.
There are certain things that the state can't do. We can't make up lost revenues for a business or a local government in many cases. But we'll try to be as responsive as we possibly can.
The effects of the coal strike in Southwest Virginia are being felt statewide. And when Governor Belial speaks about that issue, he chooses his words very carefully, and he sends a very clear message.
The only two parties who can resolve this dispute are Pittston and UMW. I don't know of anyone who can force them to make a settlement. It will be up to those two parties to decide when they have resolved the dispute to their satisfaction. I hope they do it, though, very soon.
In Richmond, Virginia, John Mongol, News Center 5.
Southern West Virginia, many northern West Virginia mines were closed today, but some coal loading docks, which had shut down earlier this week, were open and operating again this afternoon. Pickets left this loading facility after trucks ran their line. One miner was reportedly knocked down but uninjured. The president of the state's coal association says we are approaching a seriously negative situation.
Obviously, the industry is suffering. Obviously, the members of the United Mine Workers and the union itself is suffering. And the state of West Virginia is suffering. I think it's ironic that in a situation like this, we start to put financial hardship on the marginal operations in this state. And those operations, for the most part, are small, independent, UMW-covered operations.
White will be our guest on At Issue this Sunday, 11 a.m.
Need to resume negotiations. The walkout has expanded into wildcat strikes involving more than 20,000 coal miners in 6 states. Are being called back to work tomorrow. Union Local Recording Secretary Don Farmer says a temporary restraining order was issued today, and union officials want workers to return to the next shift. Farmer wouldn't comment on their reasons for walking out last Thursday.
Meanwhile, in Kentucky, 200 Eastern Coal Corporation miners are expected to go on strike in less than an hour. The strike was called by United Mine Workers President Richard Trumka. 20,000 miners in 6 states have already walked off the job in support of the union's dispute with Pittston.
Together, get everything done, because it's going to be without a job if we don't get it together.
So they saluted the flag and they got down to business.
This is a fight for all our unions and for everything that our fathers and our grandfathers fought for. Now it's our turn.
And one thing that has miners especially mad today is a letter that was just sent to retired miners by Duquesne Light Company, which owns the Warwick mine in Greene County. This letter says that the medical and life insurance benefits of the retirees will be cut off at the end of this month because contract talks with the union are at a standstill.
We'll not take concessions, no way whatsoever. They can try to hurt the pensioners, but they can't. Pensioners are tough.
And so is the fight that still remains for mine workers. In Greene County, Dave Clark.
And millions of dollars in court-imposed fines threaten the union with bankruptcy. The miners are frustrated over Pittston's refusal to sign a contract with the union in 1988 that most of the other coal companies did sign. Pittston, the biggest exporter of coal, says it needs to make job cuts to remain competitive in the world market. But the miners believe Pittston is out to break the union. The miners hope that by refusing to work and thereby crippling production in the coal industry, they will force Pittston to give in. For today, this is Ed Rabel in Charleston, West Virginia.
In Lancaster, Pennsylvania this morning at our NBC affiliate there, WGAL-TV, with the union side of this growing dispute. Mr. Trumka, good morning.
Good morning, Brian. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, sir. A federal judge has ordered your guys back to work. Do you sanction these Wildcat sympathy strikes that are going on in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia, Tennessee, Indiana, Kentucky?
The union's not authorized nor called a nationwide strike or any of the strikes that are occurring right now. But I think what you have to understand is a judge in Virginia has issued a death warrant, a financial death warrant for the United Mine Workers. His fines after 22 days would be $1 trillion. He's also jailed 3 of our members indefinitely for participating in peaceful sit-down strikes. And I think miners throughout the country feel that the economic death warrant that the judge from Virginia issued against us warrants their protest, and I believe that's why they're out.
Well, you obviously can't afford that level of fines, so where does that leave you?
Well, obviously we can't afford $1 trillion. That is an economic death warrant. We are still negotiating, and we are still very, very unified, and hopefully we'll be able to find a settlement for this strike.
How many states figure to be involved by week's end? We hear that workers in Alabama are going, as well as those in Nova Scotia.
Oh, Brian, I have no idea, because it's not an authorized strike, where miners will be out or where they will continue to protest or not. I can't give you any idea of that.
The issues here are fairly complex, and we're not going to try to negotiate them across the airwaves. But what's at issue here? Is it jobs? Is it security? Or is it the future of your union?
Well, I think it's probably a little bit of all of those. You have to understand that this is a classic case of union busting. You have an employer who came in and who wants a 60% cut in labor cost. Their labor costs are currently $10 per ton. They said they want a 60% reduction in that. In addition to that, there are 4,000 pensioners that they've completely turned their back on. They also say that in spite of their request to us when we tried to clarify or to substantiate their claims by looking at their books, they refused. This is precisely what they said, Brian, and I'll quote to you. The companies are in solid financial condition and are pleading neither poverty nor an inability to pay any union demand. To set the record straight once and for all, the books would not disclose a financial justification for concessions. If Mr. Odom were on, I wish you'd ask him if any union proposal is jeopardizing to their company, or if they can't pay it.
Let me make note that we had invited Mr. Odom, the president of Pittston Coal Group, to be with us, but due to a mix-up in communications, we're not able to bring him on our air this morning. Let me just ask you a final note. How do you see this ending, Mr. Trumka?
Well, hopefully with a contract that takes care of the pensioners, takes care of the active members.
That's the hope. What's the realistic expectation?
Well, I believe we'll be able to do that. Brian, you have a company that's reneging on a social contract that's made to people over a number of years. If Pittston can renege on its promise to the United Mine Workers, then any company can renege on any promise to workers anywhere.
This going to get a lot worse before it gets better?
Well, I hope not.
What do you think?
Well, I would anticipate that if Pittston holds true to their past practices, that they will not negotiate in good faith and things will be prolonged.
I've got to let it go there, Mr. Trumka. Thank you.
Goodbye, Brian.
Station.
Strike in Kentucky, West Virginia, and Virginia. Good evening, everyone. I'm John Cleary.
And I'm Betty Payne. Thanks for being with us this evening. Well, like an intensifying prairie fire, the UMW strike has spread to Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Kentucky. Late yesterday, UMW President Richard Trumka ordered Pittston coal miners in eastern Kentucky to walk off their jobs. Tom Callan reports from the coal communities along the Kentucky-West Virginia border.
Local 5737 walked off the job at 12:01 this morning at Pittston's eastern Kentucky operation in Stone. More than 200 of these Pittston miners will take their turns at this makeshift picket site. Many miners said they felt guilty watching from the sidelines over the past 2 months as their colleagues in Virginia and West Virginia were arrested and jailed.
We had been felt like we were isolated. We were being told to work when our brothers across the borders were out on strike. They were being arrested, placed in jail, and yet we were being told to work.
1,500 striking Pittston miners walked off the job last April 5th in Virginia and West Virginia. But here in eastern Kentucky, some 200 miners have stayed on the job. But that was a deliberate union strategy to slow down production. These latest recruits to the growing UMW strike believe Pittston will not send in replacement workers. But there is no reason to believe the company will allow its operation in Stone to stay idle.
Are you going to have sit-down demonstrations in front of trucks?
We're not going to rule out any sit-down demonstrations at this time. We're going to take it day by day.
On the Newswatch in Stone, Kentucky, Tom Callan, WKPT.
When federally mediated talks will resume.
Another 93 striking coal miners of contempt of court. The judge also has heard protests from the Pittston Coal Group about a union court maneuver that might wipe away hefty fines against the union in state court. News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell reports from Abingdon.
Judge Glenn Williams sent the group of miners home innocent of contempt, telling them it's hard to believe they didn't know when they were arrested on the picket line in late May about his orders banning mass picketing and blocking access to Pittston operations. But still, he accepted their sworn testimony they didn't know.
Nobody was made aware of it before it happened. We have all respect for the judge's orders, and
Go back home and go to work now.
we'll obey it.
3 strike leaders remain in jail for contempt, although they too may soon come forward with court statements that would free them.
And they certainly were in good spirits and still believe in the cause. There's a lot of the rank and file who would like to have them back because they mean so much to them. They are an inspiration and give them a source of guidance.
Judge Williams will decide Friday whether to sanction the union's effort to consolidate federal and state court injunctive action against the union. Pittston attorneys are protesting, saying the union's next move would be to try to get dissolved. The state court injunction calling for millions of dollars in fines against the union. In Abingdon, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center 5.
Trumka says he has not ordered the Wildcat sympathy strikes occurring in several states. But the president of Pittston Coal says the strikes are clearly the work of the national union leader. News Center 5's John Mongol has more on the 2.5-month-old strike.
Sympathy strikes are being reported in Kentucky, West Virginia, Ohio, Indiana, and Tennessee. But during a nationally televised interview on the Today Show, Trumka says they are not sanctioned.
The union's not authorized nor called a nationwide strike or any of the strikes that are occurring right now.
Today Show producers had intended to have Pittston Coal President Mike Odom on with Trumka this morning, but a communications mix-up between the network and Odom prevented that. However, Odom did have some comments to respond to the union president's comments on national TV.
Mr. Trumka is clearly directing this nationwide strike. He called for it in Charleston. He had meetings in Charleston.
Trumka also called U.S. District Court Judge Glenn Williams potential fines against the union a financial death warrant for the UMW.
He's also jailed 3 of our members indefinitely for participating in peaceful sit-down strikes. And I think miners throughout the country feel that the economic death warrant that the judge from Virginia issued against us warrants their protest, and I believe that's why they're out.
Trumka says Pittston is engaging in what he calls a classic case of union busting, but Odom says union jobs are guaranteed in the company's latest offer.
I'm not going to sit here and rebut irresponsible statements. We're the ones who addressed the union's concerns. We're the ones who gave new proposals that move toward the union's needs. The facts are, they never made one proposal.
Another point of disagreement is negotiations. Pittston declared an impasse shortly after the union left the bargaining table 2 weeks ago.
We are still negotiating, and we are still very, very unified, and hopefully we'll be able to find a settlement for this strike.
We are definitely at a legal impasse, and further bargaining is futile. We will not be bargaining with the union.
John Mongol, News Center 5.
Miners stopped Pittston coal trucks today. Union members from several adjoining states joined those on the strike in Southwest Virginia for convoys past Pittston operations.
The company just decided that they would stop hauling for a while.
Has this presented any sort of problem for your people today?
Other than the sheer numbers of vehicles, no. They've been very peaceful, very orderly. We've had no problems with them at all.
Pickets at the Moss No. 3 coal preparation plant say the number of coal trucks dropped from 395 a week ago to only 95 today.
I would estimate it at about 200 came from Wise County, and they were headed to the Nore and McClure area, and they have been up in that area since about 10 o'clock. They have now departed. Some of them have gone back toward Wise County, and some of them have headed down 63 toward St. Paul.
Striking miners have taken to the road since court injunctions limited the number of pickets at Pittston sites. Down Pittston Coal's group's only active mine in Kentucky today. Wildcat strikes across the state closed at least 5 coal operations. About 200 union miners are affected by the strike.
We received a strike call order yesterday afternoon at 2 p.m. We called an emergency meeting for our local, explained the strike call decision. Our membership received that order with open arms. They were pleased to be given the privilege to come out on the strike line and to assist our brothers across the border in both West Virginia and Virginia. We first set about completing the building of our picket shacks, which were erected about 7 p.m. last night. Our picket lines went into effect at 12:01 a.m. and are being manned around the clock.
As of today, 1/3 of the nation's United Mine Workers are off the job. Mines in Alabama, Illinois, and Ohio had 5,000 miners off the job in sympathy with striking Pittston miners. More reporting. 3 strike coordinators jailed for orchestrating the United Mine Workers civil disobedience campaign are out of jail tonight. The primary strike coordinator from Washington, Marty Hudson, the president of the UMW Southwest Virginia District, Jackie Stump, and UMW International Representative C.A. Phillips are expected to appear in federal court tomorrow. U.S. District Judge Glenn Williams says he released the 3 in the custody of a UMW attorney and that they will appear before him in the morning. UMW Vice President Cecil Roberts indicates the 3 will agree to obey the judge's strike restrictions and be freed. Roberts says the 3 leaders already demonstrated a great commitment to the effort by staying in jail 2 weeks. Judge Williams ordered the trio held without bond on June the 5th until they promised to end the civil disobedience, which is a rallying point for thousands of UMW miners staging wildcat strikes around the country. In Abington, another group of miners were cleared
tomorrow. The fact that those union leaders were jailed inspired a lot of anger at last week's rally. The next day, the wildcat strike began. And today, more than 27,000 UMW miners have joined the walkout. Alabama, Illinois, Missouri, and Ohio were hit. About 20,000 miners in West Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and Indiana walked off the job last week. Today, hundreds took their protest to the nation's capital. More than 300 carloads of UMW members traveled to Washington, D.C., and Virginia State Police say they deliberately blocked the area's roadways during rush hour. 15 citations were issued, charging the miners with impeding traffic.
Well, Pike County, Kentucky is the latest target of that strike. More than 200 miners at 4 Pittston coal operations shut down today by the walkout. Miners say they walked off the job because of unfair labor practices. For 75 days, miners at Pittston operations in West Virginia and Virginia have been on strike.
We see and expect similar circumstances to arise here as it has arisen in Virginia.
Do you anticipate them trying to take coal out of this operation?
Yes.
Can you stop it?
We're here to try. We're here to stop it. We'll do whatever's necessary to stop any and all production that we can from leaving Eastern Coal Corporation.
This walkout in Pike County is the only union-sanctioned wildcat strike.
John Cleary.
And I'm Jane Kane. Thanks for being with us this evening. U.S. District Judge Glenn Williams lifted contempt of court charges against the top brass of the United Mine Workers. The union leaders were released from jail after they agreed to obey the judge's restrictions on mass demonstrations and roadblocks. As Tom Callan reports, this represents a change of heart for the UMW.
Jackie Stump, Marty Hudson, and Cecil Phillips emerged from the federal courthouse in Abingdon, Virginia as free men after 2 weeks in the Roanoke City Slammer. At the union's request, the three liberated union leaders held a private hearing in the chambers of U.S. District Judge Glenn Williams. Behind closed doors, they promised to abide by the judge's June 7th injunction. 2 weeks ago, before many of these same supporters in the Abingdon courtroom, the UMW leadership said they couldn't promise to follow the court injunction. A defiant but subdued Hudson said he had a lot of time to think in jail.
You ever been locked up? I mean, it's not good to be locked up. It's not good to be in an institution, but it's worse to be locked up when you don't feel like you've done anything.
Vice President Cecil Phillips received birthday greetings from supporters. He is 39 years old today. He said this is the happiest birthday present he has ever received. It was a long 15 days in jail for Stump, Hudson, and Phillips. But Stump made the most of his time. He wrote a poem, and he lost 12 pounds.
A slave for a company, but you are still not free. A company will use you, then it throw you aside, thinking we will go away, but forgetting we are people with pride.
In a statement prepared by UMW lawyer Jim Vergara, the union's top brass promises to respect the law. They said it was time to leave the jailhouse to rejoin friends and supporters on the picket line. They say the struggle against Pittston will continue. What's unclear today is whether the struggle will bring them back to the federal courthouse in Abingdon. On the News Watch in Abingdon, Virginia, Tom Callan, WKPT News.
Has issued a temporary restraining order against the United Mine Workers in Virginia and West Virginia. In response to complaints from the National Labor Relations Board, a U.S. District Judge says that all secondary boycotts are illegal. The judge's ruling applies to all sympathy walkouts in District Number 28 in Virginia and Districts 31 and 17 in West Virginia. Westmoreland Coal and Big Stone Gap announced this afternoon that the company is pleased with the judge's decision. Westmoreland has been hit with wildcat walkout since the Pittston strike started April 5th.
Virginia have their leaders back tonight. 3 strike coordinators jailed for contempt of court have cleared themselves. As News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell reports, they did it by appearing before a federal judge requesting a private meeting instead of an open court hearing.
All they had to do was say they would obey the order and not be having other people to disobey the order, and they wouldn't have gone to jail in the first place.
And that's all strike leaders Marty Hudson, Jackie Stump, and C.A. Phillips did to gain freedom from jail after a 2-week stay that's left them with mixed feelings.
It's not good to be locked up. It's not good to be in an institution, but it's worse to be locked up when you don't feel like you've done anything. I mean, it's harder to understand, and it's harder to take.
I feel stronger than I've ever been, and, you know, I'm going to pass that on to all the people.
Supporters gave the trio an affectionate homecoming outside the courthouse. Inside, Judge Williams had been flooded with mail urging him to release the strike leaders. The letters came from the Mine Workers Union, other unions, and even one came from Marty Hudson's mother-in-law. The judge says the public outcry wasn't unexpected.
Oh, this is a very highly emotional matter, and it's not unusual on something this emotional and with the feelings that people have to receive mail.
Did it have any bearing on your decision?
No, of course, I don't ignore it. I read my mail and so forth, but I have to arrive at decisions based on what I think is right and wrong rather than public pressure.
This doesn't end federal court contempt cases. Another group of 75 union members are scheduled to appear in court Wednesday, and new complaints of contemptuous conduct in the strike are being reported. In Abingdon, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center 5.
The judge has issued a back-to-work order against the UMW to try to stop a wildcat walkout that's now spread to 9 states. Several hundred of the 27,000 miners involved in the wildcat strike are showing up in southwest Virginia. They're staying at a Solidarity camp in Russell County, 10 acres of property owned by a Pittston miner.
We've got people in here from Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and they're having a ball.
The out-of-state miners also include some who have been laid off at other companies. Union officials say the wildcat walkouts outside the area is part of the union's economic warfare against the Pittston Coal Group. Officials say shutting down other companies with sympathy walkout is working to put economic pressure on Pittston.
We have information that would lead us to believe that the Japanese are upset with them. The other coal companies in the industry are upset with them.
It's absolutely not true. I've not had one phone call from another coal company.
The union leaders appearing for the first time in public since they were put behind bars June 8th.
It's good to be back. Got a lot of work to do, you know? A lot of work to do.
Incarcerated for more than a week were Jackie Stump, president of the UMW Southwest Virginia District, C.A. Phillips, an international rep, and strike coordinator Marty Hudson. A federal judge said he wouldn't let them go until they promised to stop organizing massive sit-down strikes blocking Pittston coal trucks. Today, a promise to the judge set them free.
It is not our intention to go forth and intentionally and knowingly violate that order. Neither will we ask others to do so. We will, however, continue to support the UMWA in its struggle against Pittston.
But the promise, Hudson stresses, does not admit defeat.
There's no white flags on these hands, I'll tell you that. I guarantee you we're going to win this strike through hard work because of these people, you know, and because it's just and it's right. And we're not turning back and we're not slowing down. This strike's still building. You win strikes by them building. This strike is building.
On the Pittston picket lines, UMW members are glad their leaders are out of jail, but admit there will be a change of tactics.
Well, we're going to wait and see what International decides to do. We're going to abide by the judge's orders as of now. There'll be no more blocking roads or anything like that. So we're just going to do, as he says, no violence or anything like that.
The new strike tactic has given some picketers traffic citations. Instead of blocking trucks, they're now getting in their cars and clogging traffic by driving at a snail's pace to slow Pittston trucks. More than 1,000. Most of the miners work for Consolidation Coal near Moundsville. The new walkout brought the total number of miners off the job in 9 states to almost 30,000.
It appears tonight that Kentucky miners are not listening to their leaders, and instead of returning to work, they're returning to the picket lines. Throughout the day, 2,100 Kentucky miners were reported off the job in sympathy with those striking Pittston. A telegram was supposedly sent from union headquarters to workers asking them to go back to work. Those on a sanctioned walkout at 4 Pittston mines in Pike County are keeping up their vigil. Union President Glenn Stanley told me tonight a group of about 200 workers are off the job protesting unfair labor practices by Pittston. Their union brothers at Pittston mines in Virginia and West Virginia have been on the picket line 76 days.
Miners are out of work tonight after Appalachian Mining closed 2 of its operations. Its non-union mines in Boomer and Campbell's Creek were shut down for safety reasons, the company said.
Coal trucks at Pittston operations.
This is the victory flag, and nothing white on this that I see, you know, and I ain't turning back, just like they say in West Virginia. I ain't going back.
Since they were jailed June 5th, Pittston has declared an impasse with the union in contract negotiations, and company president Mike Odom has announced the implementation of a new contract.
Let Mike Odom go in there for a week. He ought to be the one locked up anyway. Pittston's the criminal. Let him go in there for a week. I doubt if he could take it a week. He couldn't take it. He's too weak. I can see it in his eyes. He couldn't handle a day.
Wildcat strikes have hit mines in 9 states. About 27,000 miners have walked off the job as a show of support for the United Mine Workers strike in Southwest Virginia.
Yeah, Mike Odom implements the contract. Mike Odom's never been to the bargaining table. And I'm telling you, we're going to win the strike because of these people in Southwest Virginia.
Tomorrow, miners and pensioners will commemorate the anniversary of the McClure mine explosion that killed 6 miners in Dickinson County in 1983. Mark Helton, Eyewitness News 11, Abingdon. Good evening, I'm John Cleary.
And I'm Betty Payne. Thanks for being with us this evening. Well, since the Pittston coal strike began on April 5th, several thousand demonstrators have been arrested as the union blocked entrances to company plants. All the demonstrations were nonviolent, reminiscent of the civil rights movement of the 1960s. But as Tom Callan reports, the men who once walked the picket line engaged today in a road war with Pittston's replacement drivers.
It looked like an L.A. traffic jam in front of the Clinchfield mine as hundreds of horn-tooting Ford pickups and cars blocked coal trucks entering Pittston proper. Just a few weeks ago, you would have seen hundreds of miners dressed in their green army fatigues lying down in front of this truck here at the Clinchfield coal mine in southwest Virginia. You don't see that anymore. The purpose is the same, but now the strategy has changed. Scrupulously obeying the letter of the law against blocking the entrances to the Moss processing plant, miners take to the road. Like a convoy, they come from West Virginia, Illinois, even Sullivan County, Tennessee. The miners are not sitting down in front of the coal trucks, but this driver had a tense face-off with a coal driver until the state police finally intervened. Why are you down here?
Tourist.
Tourist?
Yeah, all the way.
Are you going to be a tourist all day long today?
Yes, sir. All the way.
A caravan of trucks idle across the Moss No. 3 processing plant, waiting for a chance to cross the road and deliver the metallurgical coal.
They're parked right now. That looks good to me.
This man would not identify himself, but the UMW says he works for Advanced Security, which has been hired by Pittston to take pictures and collect evidence of all strike activity. The UMW believes they can obey the injunction, but still hurt the company. On the News Watch in South Clinchfield, Virginia, Tom Callan, WKPT News.
Staged a solidarity rally. The UMW and the Virginia AFL-CIO are rallying to show their displeasure with Governor Gerald Baliles and his handling of the strike against Pittston Coal. Baliles contends he is neutral in the strike, and state police are only in the area to keep the peace. The union says Baliles is anything but neutral.
In other mining news, this is the 6th anniversary of the McClure mine disaster. 7 people were killed when a methane explosion ripped through a section of Clinchfield Coal Company's McClure No. 1 mine. A special ceremony was conducted this morning to commemorate the anniversary. Yellow ribbons were posted to remind this community about the friends they lost on June 21st, 1983.
Miners from West Virginia, Kentucky, Indiana, and Alabama joined local miners at a rally last night in St. Paul, Virginia. Strike officials are calling the strike the People's Movement.
No longer should coal miners, working class people, simply because you live in southwestern Virginia, have second-rate school systems, second-rate roads, and have less of an opportunity than someone living in northern Virginia where I live. Stand up, be counted. Now's the time.
According to Virginia House of Delegates member Jack Kennedy, the future of Southwest Virginia hinges on the outcome of this strike.
The UMWA must survive. It's important to the future of economic development in Southwest Virginia.
Several unions across the country are raising money for the strikers in Southwest Virginia. Meanwhile, the president of the Pittston Coal Group, Mike Odom, says fake copies of a contract are being circulated in the coal fields. Odom says the document does not state that it is a Pittston contract. It contains false information, he says, and is being distributed by persons saying it came from Pittston.
I want to know, who is it? Whose contract is this? It's not Pittston's. I want to know who's distributing it. I'd like somebody in the union to stand up and be a man or woman and say who this contract belongs to.
Pittston had planned to mail out copies of the real contract yesterday. The contract was implemented after negotiations between the company and the union broke off. The past was also in the minds of miners yesterday as they gathered in Dickinson County, Virginia to commemorate the 6th anniversary of the explosion that killed 7 at the McClure No. 1 mine in 1983. News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell reports.
We ask you today on this anniversary of a terrible disaster to remember the families of the 7
miners who would be with us today if it had not been for the explosion, dear God.
Every year since the methane explosion that killed 7 here, McClure miners have honored those who died and their survivors.
It's just something that we'll never forget that happened at this mines. If everybody forgets what can happen, then it'll happen again.
For several years after the disaster, McClure miners just refused to work on the anniversary. Threatened with company action, 2 years ago, the International Union declared the anniversary an official Memorial Day. Strikers from other Pittston operations joined the memorial service, along with teachers from the coal fields and the president of the Virginia Education Association, who are supporting the union struggle for salary, health, and pension benefits in the strike.
What happens to the miners here affects not only the economy, which therefore affects our schools, our children, and our teachers.
Pittston did not shut down the McClure mine with the strike underway this year. It did call for a moment of silence at the mine and conducted special safety sessions. In McClure, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center 5.
Police say an estimated 600 vehicles are near the Pittston mine at McClure. Meanwhile, miners from West Virginia, Kentucky, Indiana, and Alabama joined in local miners with a rally last night in St. Paul, Virginia.
Miners, working class people, simply because you live in southwestern Virginia, have second-rate school systems, second-rate roads, and have less of an opportunity than someone living in northern Virginia where I live. Stand up, be counted. Now's the time.
Virginia House of Delegates member Jack Kennedy says the future of Southwest Virginia hinges on the outcome of the dispute.
The UMWA must survive. It's important to the future of economic development in Southwest Virginia.
There are reports that other unions are raising money for the strikers in Southwest Virginia. The United Mine Workers Union also held a rally in Richmond.
Blankenship was struck in the head from gunshots fired near the Hampton coal mines in southern West Virginia. Newswatch has learned Blankenship is the son of a wildcat miner from the Hampton mines. The youth was treated and released from a local hospital, and a spokesman said he received an 8-inch gash on the right side of his head. State police in West Virginia and Virginia are reporting some widespread gunfire since talks between Pittston and the union broke off last week.
Virginia. In addition to pickets from Pittston Mines, members of the United Mine Workers from 10 states are off the job and lending their support to local pickets. Some 42,000 UMW members are off the job nationwide. News Center 5's John Mongol reports from Southwest Virginia.
Earlier this week, coal truck traffic to preparation plants came to a virtual standstill. Pickets riding cars and pickup trucks are still running afoul of Virginia State Police, though. Numerous traffic tickets are being written for impeding traffic.
They're stopping our people and letting them come across the road. It was up quite a bit yesterday over the day before. And they don't have too many today, but today's not over yet, though.
Pickets were ordered to stop massive gatherings at mine entrances and to stop blocking roads by court orders in state and federal courts. Pickets here at the Moss No. 3 coal preparation plant have moved off the side of the road into vehicles on the road to try to slow coal truck traffic into the plant.
This activity is clearly in violation of court order. It's in violation of the National Labor Relations Act.
That issue may be raised tomorrow in federal court when strike leaders Cecil Roberts and John Cox answer contempt citations before Judge Glenn Williams. Judges across the country are ordering union members back to work, but so far the pickets say there is no change in strategy.
There are a few of them leaving out, I think, going home for the weekend. Some of them leaving today, some leaving tomorrow, but I think they'll be back next week, though.
It has impeded the delivery of our coal.
In Russell County, Virginia, John Mongol, News Center.
Have their leaders back tonight. 3 strike coordinators, jailed for contempt of court, have cleared themselves. As News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell reports, they did it by appearing before a federal judge, requesting a private meeting instead of an open court hearing.
All they had to do was say they would obey the order, and not be having other people to disobey the order, and they wouldn't have gone to jail in the first place.
And that's all strike leaders Marty Hudson, Jackie Stump, and C.A. Phillips did to gain freedom from jail.
Virginia. They're staying at a solidarity camp in Russell County, 10 acres of property owned by a Pittston miner.
We've got people in here from Kentucky.
Order against the UMW to try to stop a wildcat walkout that's now spread to 9 states. Several hundred of the 27,000 miners involved in the wildcat strike are showing up in southwest Virginia. They're staying at a solidarity camp in Russell County, 10 acres of property owned by a Pittston miner.
We've got people in here from Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and they're having a ball.
The out-of-state miners also include some who have been laid off at other companies. Union officials say the wildcat walkouts outside the area is part of the union's economic warfare against the Pittston Coal Group. Officials say shutting down other companies with sympathy walkouts is working to put economic pressure on Pittston.
We have information that would lead us to believe that the Japanese are upset with them. The other coal companies in the industry are upset with them.
It's absolutely not true. I've not had one phone call from another coal company putting pressure on us with regard to the strike.
Odom says local and out-of-state miners are using rolling roadblocks on coal roads, and that is slowing production.
Should coal miners, working class people, simply because you live in southwestern Virginia, have second-rate school systems, second-rate roads, and have less of an opportunity than someone living in northern Virginia where I live. Stand up, be counted. Now's the time.
According to Virginia House of Delegates member Jack Kennedy, the future of southwest Virginia hinges on the outcome of this strike.
The UMWA must survive.
But a federal judge today ordered it returned to state court. The union had argued that both federal courts and state courts had leveled injunctions against union pickets, and the federal court had priority. But in a ruling today, Judge Glenn Williams stated that the suit was based on the Virginia right-to-work law. There is no similar federal law. The suit was moved after a state judge levied nearly $3 million in fines over violations of his injunctions. Both the company and the United Mine Workers to resume contract talks, this time in southwest Virginia. The agreement is the first step toward a possible settlement since talks broke off over a month ago. News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell reports.
I was convinced Federal Judge Glenn Williams has succeeded in getting the presidents of the coal company and the UMW to meet face-to-face for the first time ever, and to agree to resume talks aimed at ending the strike.
And I guess we considered a step is better than no step at all.
We're obviously taking, what happened today is we're taking it at the face value. They're going to return with good faith, and they're going to demonstrate the flexibility that we've heard about. There's nothing else that occurred.
The talks may start as soon as Wednesday at the Duffield Ramada Inn. Pittston is insisting each party occupy separate rooms this time, with the federal mediator carrying contract proposals from one to the other.
But it was time for a different approach to trying to take away the acrimonious atmosphere and give a new way to try to resolve this dispute.
Instead of us taking a position out and them taking a position out and saying, here's our position and here's your position, they don't match. What I've suggested is we ask them for their needs. What do you need? Not what do you want, what do you need? And they ask me, what do we need? What do our people in this area need for an agreement?
Judge Williams was drawn into the strike from contempt of court cases stemming from union efforts to stop Pittston's production. He says he felt compelled to push for resumed talks, not because of the court cases, but because the dispute is turning neighbor against neighbor in coal-filled communities.
The biggest thing is the division among people, animosity and divisiveness.
Whether or not this works to end the strike remains to be seen. If it doesn't, Judge Williams, at the union's request, will be making a list of alternative mediators. In Duffield, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center 5.
And it spreads beyond the hardships of the miners and their families. News Center 5's John Mongol takes a look at businesses in Southwest Virginia.
With high unemployment and the uncertainty of the coal industry, there aren't many economic booms here in Dickinson County's seat. But as the strike between the United Mine Workers and Pittston Coal drags on, it becomes harder and harder for small businesses.
They don't know how long it's going to hold out, and it's more careful than they was before.
It's hurting me every day. I mean, I can hold out a little while, but speaking for the other businesses, I can't do that, but now I'm hurting.
It's hard on retailers now, but some of them have felt the economic pressure since the union's last contract expired.
I feel a difference now, but I've felt a difference for the last 2 years, not just now. Before they started, you know, the contract, they knew the contract was coming up, and most miners started economizing then.
Some sales have actually increased during the strike, such as the sale of camouflage clothing. But many of the merchants selling the Solidarity colors are donating part of that profit to the union. A storefront here in Clintwood looks the same as it would almost everywhere, except for one large difference. Almost every storefront has a sign of support for the United Mine Workers.
If they don't get this contract, our whole town goes down.
They're fighting for a cause, and I support them.
And apparently the striking miners and their families support their local businesses too. They're spending what money they have in their hometowns. In Clintwood, Virginia, John Mongol, News Center 5.
A former Bristol, Tennessee policeman goes on trial.
Rallied last night in St. Paul. The union's president, Richard Trumka, along with Cecil Roberts and Marty Hudson, blasted the latest efforts to agree on a contract.
When they sat in front of Judge Williams, there were no conditions. Now they put a condition on it. In order for us to bargain, we have to relinquish. We have to turn our back on 130,000 men. That's what it says.
Meanwhile, the mayor of Boston, Richard Flynn, says that if a strike settlement has not been reached in 7 days, the city would boycott a large bank connected with Pittston.
The mayor of that city has indicated to Bill Craig, who is
So you're optimistic he'll...
Very optimistic.
Meadows was knocked out by the rock, which broke the glass in his truck, and his son suffered a broken jaw. Meadows...
The police situation down here, what appears to be intimidation.
That opinion is shared by the numerous out-of-state union members who have...
for impeding coal truck traffic. The hearing, that is, continues this morning in Russell County, Virginia Circuit Court. And
Second lines today.
Boston Mayor Raymond Flynn has come to Southwest Virginia to see if the stories he has heard are true.
The stories that were presented to me were somewhat troubling. The police situation down here, what appears to be intimidation.
That opinion is shared by the numerous out-of-state union members who have joined striking Pittston miners, slowing traffic on area coal haul roads.
I think they're picking on us for being down here for something that we believe in. That is wrong.
The arrest, I'm sure, was made with probable cause. We're not going to stand here and debate the issues of the case. That's what the courts are all about.
State police issued several tickets today for pickets impeding coal truck traffic. And that's just one area where Union President Richard Trumka's longtime associate, says the government is taking sides. For the past 3 months, union members on strike here have made allusions to Southwest Virginia and Poland and other communist countries. Today, Boston's mayor agreed.
Right now, it seems like, in many respects, the government has decided and have made a choice. They're in the camp of the company.
Almost every avenue of protest by the union has been met with fines and arrests on both the state and federal level. But while the state police are unpopular with the pickets, the police say they're trying to be fair.
I don't think that we're singling out one group against the other.
Though the talks have resumed to try and settle the strike, there appears to be little optimism for a quick agreement on the picket line.
If this company don't negotiate, then I figure it'll be a nationwide strike. That's what it'll take, the whole eastern and western United States, all the unions together, to break this thing.
In Russell County, Virginia, John Mongol, News Center 5.
Union attorneys moved a suit filed by Pittston to federal court earlier this month, but a federal judge today ordered it returned to state court. The union had argued that both federal courts and state courts had leveled injunctions against union pickets, and the federal court had priority. But in a ruling today, Judge Glenn Williams stated that the suit was based on the Virginia right to work law.
The battle between UMWA members and the Hamden Coal Company, a non-union mine. This is the site where one of the protesters was shot. Now, that happened about 1:30 in the morning. Both sides say they're not responsible.
Most antagonizing is from the other side, not us. We all the time get the blame for it, but most of the time it's not us doing it.
What are you doing out here?
We're just standing here. About 1:30, they staged an all-out assault. They charged the guardhouse.
The protester who was shot was not a miner. He was a family member of a retired miner. There are strong feelings for the union in this part of the state, especially among older miners. They say if this fight breaks the union, they will lose their retirement benefits. Now, the feelings here are so strong that one woman even left her hospital bed so she could return to her post in front of the Logan Mingo mine.
And they ran plumb over top of my brother. They just rammed the gate with their car. But I still had to sit here because if I didn't sit here, the guys would have took guns and killed him.
Protesters, union members, and company officials all say they don't want any violence, but they say they will defend themselves. In Mingo County, I'm Kathy McDaniel for CBS.
The UMW strike started. Tax records of the Pittston Coal Group show the strike is hitting the company hard. The company's cost sales have dropped far below levels reported in pre-strike months. In Dickinson County, where most of Pittston's operations are located, sales are roughly 2/3 lower than before the strike began April 5th.
Miners in 10 states. The West Virginia State Police report a disabled miner's 19-year-old son was grazed by a bullet at a Mingo County mine today. The Wildcat strikes are in support of 1,900 miners on strike against the Pittston Coal Group. News Center 5's John Mongol reports UMW members from other areas are helping Southwest Virginia miners slow traffic to Pittston processing plants.
Earlier this week, coal truck traffic to preparation plants came to a virtual standstill. Pickets riding cars and pickup trucks are still running afoul of Virginia State Police, though. Numerous traffic tickets are being written for impeding traffic.
They're stopping and stopping our people and letting them come across the road. It was up quite a bit.
Officials said they were surprised the judge did not send them to jail. Supporters of the United Mine Workers Union gathered today in Big Stone Gap, Virginia at U.S. District Court to congratulate Cecil Roberts, Vice President of the International Union, and John Cox, a union representative, who both escaped punishment for allegedly breaking a court injunction that prohibits civil disobedience. For the past week, hundreds of cars have been slowing transportation of Pittston coal. Judge Glenn Williams repeatedly asked Roberts if he was orchestrating the convoys, and Roberts repeatedly gave the same answer.
I commented to the judge in good conscience I couldn't do that. That's a decision that each person in this country, in my opinion, has a right to decide.
Roberts was also asked if he would request the strikers, many of whom are Wildcat strikers from out of state, to cease the civil disobedience.
And we worked extremely hard to keep this peaceful and nonviolent, and we're going to continue to do so. And I hope the judge continues to give us that opportunity to keep it peaceful and nonviolent.
Judge Williams said he would rule on the status of the mass convoys at the Moss No. 3 preparation plant sometime next week. Richard Trumka told supporters the strike was a war against Virginia. Today, Judge Williams said if that statement also included his court, Trumka was declaring war on the wrong place. And in West Virginia, the governor has offered to mediate the Pittston dispute. Governor Gaston Caperton is offering to meet around the clock with Pittston CEO Paul Douglas and UMW President Richard Trumka. However, Caperton has set down guidelines for those talks. Both sides must agree to make a good faith effort to stop wildcat strikes that have spread throughout the country. Other coal companies suing the union over the wildcat strikes must suspend their litigation, and other coal companies must promise not to ship coal to Pittston while negotiations are in progress. Caperton is asking both sides to meet with him on Monday to end the 2.5-month-old.
Gerald Belial sent a letter to county administrators in 4 Southwest Virginia coal counties asking them to meet with him to discuss the strike situation. News Center 5's Jim Conrad has a report.
The governor sent letters to Russell, Tazewell, Dickinson, and Wise County leaders asking for a meeting July 19th. In the letter, the governor discussed the economic impact of the strike on the counties and the states. West Virginia Governor Gaston Caperton called for UMW President Richard Trumka and Pittston Company President Paul Douglas to meet with him on Monday. Governor Belials responded to that request with reporters in Richmond today.
The only parties who can resolve the dispute are the parties themselves, Pittston and the United Mine Workers. When they decide that they have reached a solution that is satisfactory to both sides, then this dispute may be resolved. But they are the only ones who can really resolve it. I hope that the meeting in West Virginia is productive because, as I understand it, the situation there is somewhat different. But again, I am doing what I think is in the best interest of Virginia, and I hope that the parties can resolve their disputes very quickly.
United Mine Workers Union President Richard Trumka has accepted the invitation from West Virginia's governor to negotiate a coal strike settlement at the governor's mansion. There's no response yet from Pittston Coal Group, which has been struck by the UMW since April. Jim Conrad, News Center.
End up with nothing? They won't get this decent contract?
Absolutely not. I don't think there is any chance of that because they're so solidified, they're so unified, and the people, the communities are supporting the Pittston miners.
The UMW strike against Pittston involves 1,900 miners in West Virginia, Virginia, and Kentucky.
With all negotiations off, it's likely we'll see more of the same thing witnessed in Stone, Kentucky this morning. More than 100 pickets surrounded a building where hired security guards were staying. The cops moved in to let the hired guards leave safely. In the midst of the turmoil, a Jeep driven by a Pittston official was overturned. About 40 state troopers moved in to quell the turbulence. It was resolved with no additional incidents, no arrests, and the union claiming victory this day.
We have history, we have made the records, we have got the gun thuds that the company hired out of here.
Police report all is quiet in Stone.
From West Virginia's governor.